Warning, the following contains spoilers. Not a lot of spoilers, but there are spoilers, so if you don't like spoilers, stop listening now.
I'm gonna ask you a series of questions. I want you to respond truthfully. Have you ever hurt someone?
Yes.
Have you ever experienced anything you'd consider abnormal?
Yes.
Last question. Do you know what mutants are?
So I finally saw Fox's last X-Men movie, The New Mutants, and you know what? I actually thought it was pretty good. I actually quite enjoyed it. Until the end. For an hour and a half, I was actually engrossed and intrigued and even entertained by this unique take on a mutant property. And then it shit the bed. I even liked the horror elements, honestly. But by the final act, and spoilers here, like super spoilers, the final act of the movie is a giant demon bear. You lost me. I mean, I get why the bear is there. It feels like a villain from an episode of a New Mutants TV show, but from like the 4th season, when people have stopped caring and the writers are running out of steam, which is probably the biggest problem. As a feature-length film in an industry of big-budget action superhero films, Josh Boone's X-Men Universe film for post-millennial adolescents feels more like a pilot for a Fox's version of the CW than an actual for real big production movie. And it should have been, you know. See, the thing is, I actually think this would have actually worked as an actual series. In fact, Disney Plus, I think you guys should take a chance and greenlight this as a series. The greater irony is that the entire cast here feels like it was taken from the hot young teens of TV list of 2018, all of which would probably be more than obtainable for a TV series, to be quite honest. You've got Henry Zaga, Maisie Williams, Charlie Heaton, Anya Taylor-Joy. It's like the casting was done by taking a poll in a Tiger Beat of like favorite teen actors. It even has a blink and you'll miss it cameo by Marilyn Manson, but I don't think that's going to help anybody win any favors these days. But if you subtract the last 15 to 20 minutes of the movie, you actually have something of a decent film. That was far better than a Dark Phoenix by a long shot, and arguably it's on par with something like Suicide Squad or Ant-Man and the Wasp. In fact, I'll go on record as saying I have actually been more entertained by this movie than I was by Black Panther. Sorry, not sorry. I like atmospheric films, and the characters felt super likable. To me, it felt like a sort of homage or love letter to Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, echoing the 1980s classic in both setting and tone. You have a small cast, mostly troubled, angsty teens sequestered with an authoritarian in a hospital responsible for their rehabilitation for their own good. The conditions for wellness, of course, requiring that they no longer be a danger to themselves or others. This is a very different take on the idea of the developing mutant power teen, whereas the Professor Xavier's School for the Gifted feels like the comic book equivalent of a school for Rhodes Scholars. The nebulous institution our heroes find themselves in this film is less nurturing and inviting. It's a step away from being an asylum for the criminally insane. This is exemplified by the facility's institution-like design and its Spartan accommodations, complete with electronic-looking mechanisms on each of the teenagers' quarters, solitary confinement wings, and an almost completely lack of additional staff. The teens themselves have that appropriate feel of immaturity coupled with angst with a dash of rebellion thrown in for flavor. Their origins tell a darker side of the mutant gene concept of the X-Men comic and cartoon series, in that for many, just as actual puberty can be for some of us who didn't grow hair in certain private areas until we were like 20 ultimately manifests itself in a deeply tragic and emotionally scarring way. Where Boone succeeds as a director is that his cast competently conveys the emotional burdens of damaged teens pretty well. They emote well, and the entire film is considerably well acted. I actually really empathized with Charlie Heaton's Cannonball and with Maisie Williams' Wolfbane. Of course, Maisie's got the chops for acting in something like this ever since the Game of Thrones, and it's nice to see her try a more decidedly daring role. The only weak spot was Anya Taylor-Joy, her Ilyana Rasputin, whose powers didn't quite make sense in movie context, is the one problematic character for me in this movie. I mean, they did a really good job with some of the other characters, but with Ilyana, they did a poor job of explaining her powers specifically. And if you don't read the comics, you're not going to understand at all. As a result, you end up starting to confuse mutant abilities with just magical superpowers. Also, for some strange reason, her Russian accent was atrocious and inconsistent. It could be very convincing one minute, and then the next minute it sounded like a Midwest high school theater class production of Anastasia. All in all though, New Mutants has a cult hit feel to it that I think will find its way onto DVD collection shelves of the kind of audience that appreciate gems tragically too late for them to be of any benefit monetarily to the studio. Barring the lackluster ending though, there's something to be enjoyed here for Fox's little experiment. The story wasn't particularly amazing, though compelling enough to get you through to the credits. It didn't reinvent any visuals, for what it was, but it did not sink to the abysmal lows many claimed that it would or did. Still, I very much would like to revisit these characters again, and I hope somehow, some way, someone sees the potential here and gives it a second shot. In fact, I'll say it was good enough to actually encourage me to start picking up the New Mutants title on a monthly basis, just to see how good it is. So Fox's final movie in the X-Men universe that they had created and helped build the superhero genre with. The New Mutants, I give it a 3.5 Native American Shadow Demon Bears out of 5. If you like this content, subscribe and like below. Feel free to leave some comments, let me know. I'm always trying to improve, and I hope to see you on the next one.